Well, our next guest has been on the screens and in the lives of British Columbians for 31 years as the sports anchor with Global BC. It is our pleasure to welcome to our Legend Series the one and only Squire Barnes. How are you, sir?
I'm good. So this series must be getting close to the end, if I'm correct.
No,
you guys are pretty much run out of dudes.
You're on a show with Robson. This is the meat of the order, the heavy hitters that we're bringing.
I know. Exactly. I have been on shows with Robson in the past. Yes.
You're from Burnaby, but Don Taylor insists I designate between north, south, or elsewhere. What part of Burnaby did you grow up in?
He's north, and I'm technically central. So Burnaby Central, where I went to high school. I grew up just off of Canada Way, which is basically the middle of Burnaby.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And
what's that?
And was it a childhood that was pointing to being a sports reporter or sports anchor, Squire? Was this always the dream?
No, it wasn't always the dream. I kind of fell into it by accident almost. I mean, I grew up with a father who had three things he liked to watch: sports, politics, and anything with Dean Martin. And so I followed along. I mean, we had one television set, and either you liked sports or you didn't watch TV. Mm-hmm. So I was always engrossed in it. I followed it. I mean, my father used to have season tickets to the Canucks before they were in the NHL. I remember that. But, I kind of fell into radio by accident.
25 years ago, I was doing traffic and weather. Where did you start in news? Did you start in traffic and weather? What was the entry point? No.
The entry point was 1984. The entry point was a station that no longer exists called CKO. They needed somebody to help out their sports guy. They had one sports guy. So I volunteered in June of 84, and I kept coming in every day for free until eventually I started doing jobs that they needed to be done every day. And then in December, they felt sorry for me and gave me an actual job and paid me. So 6 months of free, and then they gave me $800 a month, which was a huge raise on zero.
And what year are we there? Amazing. What year are we talking?
1984. I remember the first Canucks coach I covered was Bill LaForge.
Oh,
all
the legendary.
I was going to say,
yes.
All 20. Who was remarkably a nice guy to the media, but the players hated him, probably for good reason. But he was great to the media.
Was it straight to Global from there, Squire? CKO? Okay.
No, there was a lot of stops in between. There was a point, I remember I had 5 jobs. Part-time at a radio station. I used to write, remember Sterling News Services? The newspapers, they had a whole bunch of small market newspapers. I would write for them. And actually, one of the jobs during that time was I would work for the Daily Racing Form. And I had to have a column of who I thought would win the race and write a little column about it. So
okay, let's break this down. Did you actually know anything there, or were you just filling space at that point and making
I did.
Yeah, okay.
When I was growing up, a friend of mine's dad owned racehorses, so we used to always be at the track. So I learned how to read the racing form.
Good for you.
I don't know how I fell into that. Somebody used to have the job, and I was hanging around the track in the press box, and someone said, "Hey, do you need a gig?" It's like, sure. Can you pick some winners? Yeah, I can try. And I mean, I don't know how many winners I picked, but I wrote very nicely. I made it sound like I knew what I was talking about.
Right, yeah.
So you didn't pursue a career as a handicapper, a bloodstock agent, or anything like that, huh?
No, there was a time when I was a kid and we were at the track looking at my friend's dad's horse, and one of the trainers started looking at me and thinking maybe this kid could be a jockey, but that wasn't going to happen.
Somebody told me you grew up with Michael J. Fox and you guys remain friends today.
Yes. I mean, Mike's a little bit older than me. I knew his sister better than I knew him when I was younger. His younger sister, Kelly, was actually the friend I was telling you about whose dad owned a lot of racehorses. His younger sister was Kelly's buddy. So I knew the Fox family. And then I sort of knew Mike peripherally. And then he used to have his golf tournament at Riverway in Burnaby, and I used to go there all the time and help out in it. So I do know Mike, yeah. I do. I last saw him. He was in town a couple of months ago. His mother, Phyllis, passed away last year, and they had a celebration of life, and he was there. So, yeah.
So fill in the gaps further. How do we get to the legendary run at Global?
I actually wrote sports page for a while.
Did you? Okay.
Yeah, when Taylor was there and Randorf was there. And while I was doing that, I also was working at CBC. They used to have a half-hour show on the weekends called Sportsline. BMAC hosted it. Barry McDonald was there. Yep. Armitage was there. Eric Dwyer was there. Greg Shannon, who's produced the Canucks games for a million years, was there as a producer. And I used to go in the edit bay and just sort of put the highlights together and stuff for everybody. And then, and we used to voice it. The guys didn't like to do, because it was a half-hour show, they didn't want to do voiceovers all the time. So they would get me to do voiceovers on tape. And then one day the director, a guy named Brian Murphy, came up to me and said, the guy's going to be away for the summer. Do you want to audition to fill in? I said, sure. I said, who else is auditioning? He said, nobody. You'll just keep auditioning until you get it right. And at that time, I had a mustache and glasses. And I probably shouldn't have been allowed near public parks looking like that. And anyway, no one told me it looked awful. And until this was a Sunday night, and he said, we're going to audition on Friday. And on Friday, I want contact lenses and no mustache. So,
oh, really? Okay.
The man changed my life in more ways than one. I owe that guy a ton. He changed my look and he changed my job. So I filled in there. And then it was J. Paul McConnell who told me at a Canucks game one day, he said, BC TV's looking they're going to do a Saturday morning show and they need a sportscaster on this show. So I auditioned here with Jennifer Mather, then became Jennifer Burke. She was who I auditioned with. Okay. And at the end of the auditions, I remember the producer came around the corner and said, okay, auditions are over. You start on Saturday. And that was that.
Wow. And
it was just, when I started here, it was just one day a week.
When J. Paul called you over, there's no way he called you just Squire. I'm sure there was some sort of, hey, Junior, something.
Well, he'd always say sir. Remember, J. Paul always had that way of talking. Thank you, sir. And but he called me over and said, "Listen, sir, there's this job, and I'll recommend you for it." Because he knew the producer. The producer was a guy named Doug Rushton who had come from CBC over to BC TV. So he was a friend of J. Paul's. That helped. Yeah.
He knew everybody in town.
Yeah.
So when did you start daily? When did you get in the big anchor chair?
September of '96. I don't know why I know all these months and dates. September of '96, they made the huge change. It was a meeting in a boardroom. There was me, there was Bernie, there was McKeechee, there was Houlihan, Michael Kennedy, who you may or may not have run across, and our bosses. And I remember our boss saying, we're going to make some changes, and some of you are going to like them, and some of you aren't, and I don't care. That was his line. And then he just read the list. So it's like I started doing the 6 and late at that point.
Wow.
And I had to do the Canucks. I remember, too, I had to do the sort of the Dan Murphy Canucks thing for one season, which I hated. So I passed it off to Barry.
Why'd you hate it?
I didn't like the travel.
Oh, yeah.
I'm not a happy flyer. So there's a lot of unhappy flights.
Yeah.
When I go on planes, I look around at all the other passengers and think to myself, do these people look like extras in a disaster movie? Because if they do, I don't like my chances. So.
Well, that feeds into my next question, because I was going to say, I mean, one of the transitions I had to make from reporting to doing what Blake and I have done for 12 years is you're kind of anchored to your studio daily. You don't get out as much, Squire. You don't see as many people.
Nope.
But that agrees with you? You're okay with that?
Well, I mean, I've got the guys here, like, it's funny, this version of the sports department has basically been together since 1997 in this place. They did the big purge in 97. Jay Janauer was actually a news reporter who wanted to be a sports guy, so they switched him in. Barry DeLay came in from Red Deer. He was a sportscaster in Red Deer for quite a while, 8, 9 years. So they and then other guys who've been here too. Brad Fay was here for a while. Steve Darling was a sportscaster for a while. Dan Elliott, Asa now, Chanel before. Lots of people. They are the reporters, so they kind of go out. So, I don't get to go out very much. But I don't mind it because I do my own editing, and I have to kind of, move pieces around the chessboard. It's not. It's true. Sometimes it's not as much fun. It'd be nice to be in the dressing room, so I have to live vicariously looking at the raw tape that comes back in.
Yeah. All right. So while we're on the topic, and you may not have the direct answer of this, but I'm sure you're educated to some degree. Is why do you think Global has stuck with this so well? They are the shining light of local sports news on television. Nobody else is doing it.
Local period. Yeah.
I mean, why do you think they're saying we're going to keep doing it? I mean, and God bless them for doing it, by the way.
Well, you're right. God bless them for doing it. Well, the News Hour has a huge audience, and it always has. And believe me, they know minute by minute what's working, what isn't working, and sports works. It's it has an audience. It's sponsored. It's not like the audience drops off the moment I show up or any of us show up. So there is an element to it. And the other thing, too, is they like to be, we are the BC station, the local station, and sports is a big part of local. I mean, I know a lot of TV stations, not just in Canada, but in the United States, kind of started ditching their sports departments with the idea that, well, there's ESPN and we don't need, but they don't do local. So they've always cherished local stories and being sort of a BC station and being everything to the viewer, and that includes sports.
And you guys are charming, and you're all charming too. And honestly, and I don't mean that as a throwaway comment. That matters too. You guys have to be able to. I think you guys are connected with the BC audience, and so the entire department has sort of said, invite us into your house, and we'll be good to you. And I think you guys have returned on that.
Yeah, it's the show. I've always felt our show is a little bit different than other news programs. A lot of news programs are very stiff, and ours is not super stiff. And I think that helps. Wayne Cox used to have a great line when he was here, and he said, "Journalism." He goes, "It's journalism on the typewriter. It's show business on TV." Mm-hmm. And it's true. I mean, if you straight read all the stories, it wouldn't be very interesting. So you need a little showbiz in it. So that helps.
Frankly, Squire, there's an authenticity to all of you guys and the station. I see Jay and Barry out there covering local amateur sports. Blake and I in our new world have talked a lot about local coverage and how it's waning from the Toronto Telecoms. But you guys are out there in the field. You're doing the stories. You got elements like This Is BC with Jay Durant. You got Global News Morning on weekends, which we watch and go, wow, like how ambitious that you're doing a morning show on the weekends. And as Blake said, you've connected with this community in this province. You guys should be very, very proud. Because here's the other thing. Coming from back east 16 years ago, Squire, I was like, Global's the big station in town? Like, there's no equivalent back east of Global being a player in the local news. So you guys have done something special out here in BC.
Of course, Global bought us, but the great thing about Global is they haven't messed with it. They realized that there's a success here, there's a heritage here. I mean, when I got here, it was BCTV,
of course,
which and at that time too, it was like we were owned by the Griffiths when I first got here. The Griffiths were all powerful. They had us, they had CKNW. And they had the Canucks, so they had everything. But Global has done very well in the handling of the acquisition, and Chorus runs this now, and they just haven't messed with the formula. Let it go.
You rattled off some big names here in your history. Who had anybody have a profound effect? Anybody really take you under their wing, or is it a collective effort?
Yeah, I guess it's a collective effort. I mean, when I got here in '92, I mean, really all the legends were here. Tony was here, and Pamela was here, and Deb was here, and all the reporters that everybody knew was here. And of course, the sports was Bernie and John and Barry. But there wasn't sort of one person who put their arm around me and said, "I'm going to show you how it is, kid." I remember when I was in radio at CKO, which again doesn't exist, and there was this old guy, he's no longer with us, who said to me, he goes, "So you want to be in radio?" I said, "Yeah." He goes, "You want to be good at it?" I said, "Yeah." He goes, "Okay, shut up and listen." And that sort of stuck with me. Whoever is telling you something, who's a veteran, shut up and listen, because you might learn something from them. So that was sort of the way it was. And there were so many people around here, and there are now, but when I was young and first here, there were so many people around who were so good at what they did, not just in sports, but in news and reporting and editing and producing. That there was just so many people to learn from. And the place, the other thing about this place, when I first got here, and it's this way today, I always think, especially in a television station, it might be the same in a newspaper office back in the day or a radio station, whoever the lead pony is, whoever the main guy or woman is, that's who basically sets the tone for the entire room. So Tony was the man. He was it. He was the king. But Tony didn't have airs about him. He talked to everybody. He was a good guy. He didn't have an ego. So if he didn't have one, you don't have one. So the whole room was so much better because of that. And Chris Galis and Sophie are the same way. There's nobody, walking around thinking they're all that. It's very much a team atmosphere. And that translates onto the air. But when I noticed that immediately, Tony was not like that at all. So nobody was like that. So it made for a much better atmosphere.
A good day off for Squire Barnes. Does it involve a golf course, a tennis court, or both?
Well, I don't know if I could do both.
I hear you're a golfer and a tennis player.
Yes, I would say golf. Golf. And I'll tell you what a good day is, 36.
Oh, wow.
Really?
That's a good day. And last year, my two best golfing buddies are both school teachers. We played I don't know if you guys have ever played a course in just over the line called Shuckson.
I know it, but I haven't played it. Yeah.
It's worth playing. Anyway,
we
played 36. It was very quick. There weren't many people out there. And I remember we got to the end, the 18th hole, and one of my friends turned to me and said, "Let's do 54." Okay, we're doing 54.
Wow.
It was a good day. Until the last 9. Then we just started slashing it around and didn't care anymore.
Yeah.
How are the shoulders? How are the shoulders on hole 50? Oh my God.
The last 9 was kind of like climbing Everest with your shorts on. It was getting a bit rough. We thought it was a great idea. This is a great idea. Let's play 54. We've got nothing to do. And by the last 9, it seemed like a stupid idea, but we made it. So 36 is a great day.
Well, speaking of golf, how much golf does Jen Hour actually play? Because every time I turn on your station, it's Jay on a golf course.
Well, Jay belongs to the Vancouver club. He's a country club man. So he plays a lot of golf. I don't know how many times he plays a week, but he does. He lives close to Vancouver Golf and Country Club, so he gets there to practice. He does the whole bit. He works Saturday to Wednesday, and I always know on Wednesday when there's a men's night because he's trying to hurry and get out of here fast. I'll do my story really quickly, and then I got to go. It's like, yeah, I know where you got to go. So, but he plays more than any of us does.
When I think of you, and I think of your broadcasting career, and please don't hold this against me, but I think of the famous show where yourself and Aaron Henn are announcing the Dream Lottery home winner. And Blake and I worked right beside Aaron for years and absolutely adore her. And I could see her sort of looking at the piece of paper going, there's no way it's my colleague Barry DeLay. And she sort of pronounces his name differently. And then you say, let me see that. Yeah, that's our guy.
I remember, yes. That she called him, I think, Barry Dealey.
That's
and
right.
Then Barry Deli. And she was up, so how it works here, she was up in the foyer, and they had like the big barrel that turned. And it was Sophie and I on the noon show. Normally it was Randine, but Randine had the day off that day. And Sophie kind of was the one who noticed it first because I was kind of looking at my script, like, oh, what am I doing here? And she said, and then when she said, I said, well, where is it from? And she said, well, Barry Deli from Port Moody. It's like, okay, how many Barry Delays live in Port Moody? One. That's how many. But I remember, and we picked up the phone and I called him on the air, which for whatever crazy reason got him and I on the Ellen DeGeneres show. But apparently I didn't see this. The people from the charity were going nuts because I was breaking the protocol that I was calling the winner before they had a chance to even really verify who it was.
Right.
Luckily, it was the right guy.
Wow.
Yeah, all these lottery
Oh,
protocols,
my God.
right? Yes, yeah.
The
yeah.
lawsuits
So I
that
didn't
would have.
realize I was breaking protocol, but I did. We had him on the air. And then a couple of days later, we get a phone call from somebody named Ellen, believe it or not, who worked for Ellen, and said, we'd like to fly you guys down and interview you. Okay. Fly us down. We'll talk to Ellen. So.
Oh, wow.
Moving on to more contemporary topics. What do you make of the Canucks these days? What do you make of the Canucks over the last 10 years, Squire?
I really don't understand, even to this moment, why they had to make a coaching change last year. I don't get it. I mean, they weren't playing well, but you had Connor Bedard sitting at the end of the dark road, and he might possibly be yours if you just kept stumbling your way to the finish line. And I always kind of laugh. I have nothing against Rick Tocchet, but I always kind of laugh when Patrick Alvin's excuse was, well, Rick was available. Like he wouldn't have been? It's not like he's the second coming of Scotty Bowman. I think he's available. Not even now, but at the end of the season. Make your move at the end of the year and just let it play out. And, go ahead. Finish in the bottom five. What the hell? You might get a shot at Connor Bedard. So I don't know about you guys, but anytime a coach comes in and has a decent finish, I don't believe the momentum lasts through the summertime. So
Blake's with you on that. Blake's with you on that.
What we saw.
Yeah.
And the other thing, too, is, how much of what happened last year, especially in the early portion of it, had to do with bad goaltending?
Yeah.
Thatcher Demko wasn't himself at the start of the year. Then he gets hurt. You asked way too much of Spencer Martin and whoever else they had, Delia and Silovs. And it's, when Tocchet came in, basically the goaltending situations ironed itself out. It started to get better. And it did help. I'm not saying the team didn't play better under him. They did. But was that just because of the change? Was that because of the goaltending? Was that because Tocchet was putting in systems that were glorious and Bruce wasn't? I don't know. We'll find out, I guess, in a couple of months.
Are they a playoff team this year?
I don't think so.
No.
I think they might be close. Again, I it's easy to say. I just think everything with this team revolves around, in many ways, Demko. If Demko plays a ton of games and plays like he can, he could probably carry this team to a low playoff spot. But then, it's so many things have to happen. You need another great year from Pettersson. You need another great year from Hughes. This Hronek has to be able to do something. Is Kuzmenko going to continue that kind of a shooting percentage? Which I think I remember looking at this, his shooting percentage was the highest this century for a season, I believe.
Crazy.
So I don't know if that can continue. But anyway, it's like, if they get the goaltending, they have a chance.
You've seen many ebbs and flows with the BC Lions over the years. What do you make of this Amar Doman owner and the impact he's had on the club here?
Well, he's trying all the right things. I'll give him that. He really is trying. The Lions, we all know the Lions are never going to have 60,000 people in that stadium. That's just, those days are gone. And every CFL team has to fight the stigma of being not the NFL. But I think that Amar Doman is doing everything he can. He is true to his word. When he took over, he said he'd spend the money, he'd try to make this better, and he is doing that. If you compare the Lions to the Whitecaps, strictly on marketing, the Lions are way ahead of the Whitecaps on that. To me, the Whitecaps have to do a lot more marketing to get people in that building. But the Lions are doing the right thing.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. No, you go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, outside of the guy calling Whitecaps games, who you had some very nice words for before we started
does a very good job calling Whitecap games, yes.
Mm-hmm. But it sounds like you follow the team.
What's that, the Whitecaps?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I love it. See, I grew up in this town, so I was there at Empire Stadium when the Whitecaps had 30-some-odd thousand people, and, they were the big thing for a couple of years in this town. They're bigger than the Canucks, bigger than the Lions. They were it. So I'd love to see, it's like, I think any of us would. It's great for all of us, it's great for our business when there's big crowds and people care deeply about whether the team wins or loses. I mean, I always say it's, this is a Canucks town to be sure. And how do you know it's a Canucks town? It's because when they lose, people are pissed off. They're really pissed off. And, we talked just a minute ago about the coaching change. That was a huge topic in this town. We all know it. It's like some were for it, some were against it, but it had a lot of emotion. I'd like to see that kind of emotion with the Lions and Whitecaps. I'd like to see that same kind of feeling when something happens with me.
It's a bit of a warning, isn't it, about the dangers of losing for any franchise, and I think the Canucks have to be wary of this too, is that the apathy does grow. And if you don't show some direction for some time, people will stay away. I mean, the Lions are a good team. The Whitecaps are a good team this year, but they're still going to have to work and fight tooth and nail to get people in there.
Well, there's a lot of things for people to do now. I mean, they could just stare at their phones and be entertained all day, unfortunately. But, you're right, Blake. If you go back in time, Canucks, in the 80s, when I first started covering them, you could have shot a cannon into some of those sections at the Coliseum and you wouldn't have hit anything but chair. So it has happened before where people just start to disappear, where they just say, we're not going to pay this kind of money to watch this. And, maybe that's the thought process in the Aquilini family, who have never been keen on doing the full rebuild, because I think they want a team to get to the playoffs, or they get playoff money and they try to stay relevant. Maybe that's the thinking. They've gone about it the wrong way, obviously, and probably did need a rebuild years ago when Trevor Linden first took over. But, yeah, it's happened in the past where the Canucks have lost a ton of fans, and they played to a half-empty arena for a long time in the 80s. It's happened before.
Let me play devil's advocate on that, Squire.
Sure.
Just because they've been dreadful for the last decade, the crowds really haven't dipped below a 15,
no, they haven't.
60.
You're right.
There's enough money in this town. Every Canucks game is an event. Vancouver's an event town, and the Scene in BC crowd is going to be there, win, lose, or draw. Do you think that's the new reality? Do you think the Aquilini see that and go, well, we don't really get punished for being bad, so let's try and make the playoffs every year and get that playoff revenue, because we're not going to suffer the lowest of lows anymore?
You might be right. I mean, it's true. They've been bad enough for a long time to have qualified to be treated the way the teams in the 80s were treated.
Correct.
And they haven't really been, abandoned at the rink the way those teams were. And interestingly enough, back then, the tickets were a lot more reasonable than they are now. I mean, it's a much more expensive night out if you're going to a Canucks game now. You are right, but I do think there is a breaking point. You can't do that forever and expect people to start filling the building. And you know what? Maybe what it takes, and it hasn't happened, but if suddenly the Whitecaps and Lions became a big deal, would that soak up some of those people, and would they start to abandon the Vancouver Canucks? I don't know, but you are correct that the Canucks have been very fortunate that people still are, breaking out the big money and going and watching them despite what they've delivered the last number of years.
But they're right on that line. That wait list is gone. Remember that wait list was so long. They're right on that line right now. So.
Yeah, I think so. As I said, we've seen it before. It's a different time. It's a different, a different generation. But you can't do it forever. You just can't, and expect people to keep paying big money. Okay, is it the game show part now? Is this game show time?
It's game show time. Rapid fire with Squire Barnes of Global BC. We need your short.
What am I playing for?
You're playing for a round at Northlands with Blake and I.
Oh, okay.
Oh, wow. Is that punishment or a gift? Wow. I'm not sure.
Well, it depends which way you look at it. It may be a punishment for you guys. It's a gift for me.
Okay. We're giving you free tickets to any Grand Slam, tennis Grand Slam. Which one are you going to?
Wimbledon.
Best Michael J. Fox movie?
Back to the Future.
The first one?
Yes.
True or false, you had an uncle who worked for NASA?
Yes, true.
What happened to your rocket science career?
Never got off the ground.
Galus, Baldry, Zussman. In a game of 2-on-2 basketball, who do you want as your teammate?
Well, that's easy. Galus.
How many strokes would Jan Hour need to give you to make a competitive golf match?
I would say 10.
Have you ever teased Christie or Madriga on air for inaccurate weather forecasts?
No, that would be cruel.
Have you ever wanted to?
If it ruined my golf game, yeah, but I've never done it.
When people meet Galus, what are they most struck by? His height, his charm, his good looks?
Ooh, that's a good one. I'm going to say his height because he is quite tall.
Which global personality is most deserving of winning the next Dream Home lottery?
You're talking to him.
Yeah, damn right. Thanks for playing, Squire Barnes.
You're quite welcome.
This Sekeres and Price clip brought to you by Applewood Auto Group. And remember,
it's all good at Applewood.